SHECP Talks. In this space, we invite folks who are or who have been part of the Shepherd Higher Education Consortium on Poverty to share valuable insights, experiences, and lessons they have learned throughout their time with SHECP. My name is Jen Handy, and I'm SHEP's Director of Grants and Engagement. Joining me today is Noah Cady, a first class or a senior to the rest of us at the Virginia Military Institute. Last summer, Noah interned with the Food Bank of South Jersey, and I've invited him here to talk about his experience and his advice for students considering a SHECP internship. Welcome, Noah.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, I must mention we are recording this just a few days before you return to post for your final year at VMI. Thank you for squeezing us in. I'm guessing it's going to be a couple busy days when you get there.
Yeah, it will be. Yep.
I'm guessing a lot of people listening to this have never lived near a military university and don't quite know what that looks like. So thank you again. All right, you just wrapped up your internship at the Food Bank of South Jersey, an organization with over 200 agency partners, programs of their own, a relatively large advocacy and education arm. Can you tell us a little bit more about the agency and what your role was there?
Yeah, so I love the food bank. The food bank is mainly a massive distribution center for food to food pantries and stuff like that. So we have a lot of trucks that go out into the neighborhoods that will just kind of set up shop, and people from the neighborhoods will come out to get their food for the week. We also have a health and wellness department, which is where I worked at. I was one of 3 interns there. There were 2 others from different programs. But I was kind of just this jack of all trades. I did everything in the department. And my main job was preparing for our nutrition education classes. So our job in the health and wellness department is to go out and educate the public on foods that are affordable, healthy, and that taste good. And I think the biggest goal that health and wellness had is just trying to reduce some of the chronic disease that we're seeing in these poverty-stricken neighborhoods, and just improve overall quality of life. But I think for me, my main job was just kind of to facilitate and to be there and to help in whatever way I could. And it was also to maybe say some things that the organization didn't have anybody else to say. So I kind of gave people a new perspective on maybe some of the things that they were working on. I also worked with vaccination clinics. So the food bank would partner with Cooper Health, which is in Camden, where the food bank is. And so the Cooper Health would supply the vaccinations for COVID and the nurses to administer them. And then the food bank would administer $10 gift cards to Wawa or Amazon. And my job was to go out into the crowds at the pantry lines or on the street and talk to people and try to convince them to get vaccinated. And it was my favorite part of the job because you never knew what you were going to see or who was going to come talk to you. It also paired nicely with some research that I'm publishing currently from last summer, which is on vaccination and social media. So I kind of got to put that knowledge to work. And I think that's where I learned the most about Camden and just people. But yeah.
You mentioned part of the nutrition education was helping to make foods taste good.
Mhm.
Why is it important that healthy foods taste good?
That's the biggest like aversion people have. I think people generally want to try and eat healthy, but they don't want to eat something that doesn't like taste bland or doesn't really make their day better, right? Like food is like so intertwined with culture as well. So like when you say to someone who's been eating the same foods for their entire life, it's deeply attached to their culture, that they need to change that up, or they need to make these different changes. It's very hard, and one of the better ways that you can help with that process is to make it taste good. So, but we also just want that repeated behavior. You know, I'm a psychology major, so I'm all about like, how can we make this a rewarding process for people? Because if we do that, they'll keep doing it. So, um, but yeah, I mean, those three things of affordability, accessibility, and tasting good um, is huge. So, and that's our main mission in health and wellness. So,
It's like nobody wants to eat food that doesn't taste good.
absolutely not. No. Yeah.
Um, what surprised you the most about working at the food bank, or things happening at the food bank?
I did not realize before I came in like how hard it is to run a nonprofit organization. I think when I was a kid and my teenage years, like I thought when you go out to like volunteer and help people, like it stops then. Like we set up shop on a Saturday morning and hand out food and then we go home. But the food bank it has a budget of like 16 or 17 million dollars. We've got a full warehouse. We've got semi trucks outside. It's a massive operation that serves over 100,000 people in 4 counties in South Jersey, Camden and Gloucester, Salem, and then uh, Burlington. Yeah. And those are massive counties. I didn't realize that. Like the counties in Virginia, in Richmond, where I'm at, are fail in comparison to those counties. Like you could drive for 30, 45 minutes and you still not be across them. So, but I think just the complexity that goes into it, because like you've got our department that does health and wellness education, then you got grants that's trying to pull in as much money as possible, which is extremely hard. And then we had programs and services that worked with SNAP, the SNAP program, trying to get people to get signed up with SNAP, which is an arbitrary, convoluted process it makes me mad every time I talk about it. But we've got all these different things, and then you got our CEO who's up there trying to run the ship, and we got people in the warehouse. So it's such a massive operation with logistics, and then we've got all of our volunteers. Like, I mean, it's like a full scale company. It's just a nonprofit. So that's kind of how I look at nonprofits now, is that like they're just categorized differently in the terms of the tax bracket, but they're full scale operations. So yeah.
Exactly. And then you have your agency partners. So you then
Yep.
work with 200 other agencies with their own ways of doing things and trying to kind of convince them of new things. So I
Yeah.
have a lot of respect for food banks and the work they do. All right. So in many ways, the SHECP internship is actually about complicating things, about complicating our understanding of poverty. Our founding director once wrote, "Academic study alone tends to relegate poor persons and communities to a distant problem rather than self-respecting equals." How did your experience change or complicate in a good way your understanding of poverty?
I think when I came in before the internship, I thought that most of poverty leads back to money and the inaccessibility of money. And then I just started talking to a lot of people at the classes and at the vaccine clinics, and you start realizing that you start peeling back the onion and you just find all these different issues, and a lot of it goes back to early decisions and access to education, but then a lot of it has to deal with mental health and things like that. So I kind of left just thinking like, I didn't feel like this is like impossible to fix, but I just felt kind of down because I realized that like the food bank serves about 100,000 people, right? But it's still not enough, and we're limited. I mean, all of other organizations are the same way, of like, we're limited by the amount of money that comes in. So our scalability is limited, even though we have this need that needs to be met. And I kind of realized that all of the stuff that is allocated for people who are in poverty is just kind of charity mail giving. I'll give when I want to, stuff like that. And I got really mad at like Target and CVS because they would give us donations, and it would be like 3 pallets of dog food, a pallet of cat litter, a whole thing of sunscreen that's like 30 SPF. And it's like, thank you for the charitable giving. You can write that off on your taxes, but this is not going to help people. So I think I left with this perspective that like people think they care, but they don't actually. When the rubber meets the road, they're not actually out there caring about human beings. And it's in everything. It's systemic. It's kind of what I realized. And then it's not really these people's fault for being in the position they're in. And I think that's kind of something that's perpetuated a lot. Like when I was a kid, I would hear older adults say like, they're just lazy, or they can't, if they would just work harder. It's like, no, like these people are working their butts off and they're out here struggling. So yeah, it just got really kind of down, but also just, where do you start? We're working on this one issue, but we've got 5, 6 others that are compounding and making this issue even worse, and they're all kind of feeding off of each other. So
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways for a lot of students, and for me, the more I work in this area, is just how intertwined everything is. You can't look at access to education separately than poverty and health outcomes and all of those things. And so it is a team effort. It takes a lot of both good intentions and education, right? And understanding how things actually work. So even if you do things with the greatest intentions, a little bit of understanding can sometimes go a very long way for understanding what people need and how to treat them with dignity and kindness. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so what is next? You have one more year on post. Where are we going? Where are we going next?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm a psychology major. I like to say I'm a psychology major with a pre-med minor, even though it's not a thing at VMI. But so I'll take a gap year, or possibly even 2, finish up some more classes. Dr. Jarrell, from one of the Insight speakers, suggested I be a scrub tech. So I would like to be a surgeon one day, out in the distant future. I'd like to do time in the Army as a surgeon. I'd like to deploy and go to cool places in the world and help a lot of people. But yeah, I want to be Dr. Noah. So.
All right, and why will Dr. Noah, or how will Dr. Noah be a better doctor because of last summer, if you think you will?
Yeah, I hope I will. So I realized at the food bank in one of our classes is a year-long class called it's called Prevent T2, so Prevent Type 2 Diabetes. And our participants would get paid every week. They get paid $25 on a gift card. And they would have to track their A1C and their weight for the whole year. And then every week they would meet and they would talk about healthy eating strategies, ways to reduce our sugar intakes, things like that that are tailored toward people who are pre-diabetic. And I got to sit in on that class a couple times, and it made me think about these people have been referred by their doctors. So what if you're a doctor and you don't know about those programs? Well, your patients aren't going to get that type of care that's outside of the medical scope. And the problem with that is that these people in these programs are losing 40 to 50 pounds over the year, and they're actually preventing diabetes. So I think as a doctor, I will be constantly looking for places that I can send patients that are that's not medical, but it's a place that's a community where they have people that are like them, all trying to complete a goal that they all share. And I think as well, like when you're a doctor, you have a sort of status in the community that you work in, and hopefully you're out in the community working and talking to people. But I think I'd also work to be an advocate and try to get on the same level as humanly possible with the people that I work with. It was one of the things that helped me a lot when I was like trying to get people to get vaccines is I would just ask them about their day, and we just have a conversation like two people who are equals, and that gains people's trust. And so I think that's just something that I'm going to look for, is places I can send people that I know are good people, and trying to just be an advocate. So
That's awesome. I think you'd be a great doctor.
thank you. Yeah.
And then you can come back and do a talk like Dr. Kelly Gerald and inspire the next SHECP interns to think differently about their world. So it goes on and on.
Yes.
In the next months, some students are going to start debating what type of work they want to do or internships they want to take part in next summer. And they're debating like, is SHEP a good fit? Or they might get down the road where they see a placement and they're like, what, how does this relate to me? What advice would you give them when deciding whether to apply and like going through the process?
Yeah. So I didn't really decide to apply until I knew about it. The director at my school told me about it actually while I was doing my research the summer before. And it sounded like a really competitive thing. Not a lot of people from my school were going to get selected, and I just didn't really think I was competitive enough. My advice would be go for it regardless of what you think. I try to live my life. If I think one thing, I'm going to do the exact opposite. So if I think I'm not going to get in, I'm going to apply. So start off with that, just apply, interview, and see what happens. I don't think you can get a better experience of where you get dropped into a community and you live with, I lived with 4 other people. Well, I lived by myself in an apartment and they lived across the hall, but we hung out all the time. So I just gained 4 friends for life. Like, you're not gonna get that anywhere else. And also, like, with the placement, I want to be a surgeon. Like, I want to do trauma surgery, and I thought I was going to go to a clinic and live this pre-med life and whatever, right? And then I remember, like, I woke up to an email. I was like, I'm going to a food bank. Like, what is this? It's like, you're not here to totally learn about your career. You're here to learn about the people you're going to serve. And you're going to learn about people in general. And I can't really think of an industry or anything that doesn't deal with people. So, it's a skill you got to learn and you got to get better at. And it's also really interesting. Like, I met so many different people with varying backgrounds. People who are in pantry lines who had multiple master's degrees. Sitting there on the side of the street picking their brain was awesome, because you never know who you're going to meet. And I also, like, I'd never been to Philadelphia or Camden before. I loved it. I want to go back. Like, I want to go. I think the #1 place on my list for school is Cooper Hospital, or Cooper Medical School. Never heard of it before, but I'm going to be applying. So, you never know what's going to happen. So just take the shot and see what happens.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today on SHECP Talks. I'm incredibly grateful you had time to join us. And until next time, this is SHECP Talks.